Good morning. This is Chandra Easton here from StarAstrologyHealing.com, speaking to you this morning about this is part 2 of my series of chats about moving from darkness into light. We're going through enormous upheaval and change on Earth, and I'm an esoteric astrologer, and esoteric astrology is a brilliant canvas to be able to understand the big picture of humanity's life, our place in the cosmos, our unfolding consciousness. So just to briefly recap, if you haven't seen part 1, I recommend you find that on my website or on my YouTube channel, where I spoke about the great change and this period of enormous transformation. It's actually a crossover between the age of Pisces, the outgoing age of Pisces, and the incoming age of Aquarius, and it's the pointy bit in the middle. That's a 500-year period, and the pointy bit in the middle is kind of where we are now in this mighty crossover. And you could say that this great change, the upheaval that is manifesting, is because we desperately need a deeper consciousness, a greater heart, a greater connection, a greater personal responsibility, a greater willingness to be there for each other, for the animals, for the planet, and to live in harmony with physical laws and spiritual law. I also spoke about Uranus as the catalytic energy, holding the energy of electric fire or spiritual will, moving through the sign of Taurus during the years 2019 to 2026. And you could think about Uranus moving through Taurus like it's like a javelin or something that's been thrown from cosmos, from the realms of holiness towards humanity, to lance the boil of our selfishness, our separation, our fear and our apathy. Yes, and I referred to this as a birthing. But of course the lancing of a boil is a different analogy and indicates a great deal of pain and a certain amount of, pus, I suppose, and nasty smells. I then also spoke about Hercules and the myth of Hercules as he moves through the tests and trials of the signs of the zodiac, and specifically as he's facing the test of Scorpio. It's about neutralising the Hydra, and the Hydra is a sort of a water serpent that has 9 heads. So if you haven't heard that talk, please go back and refresh yourself on it. And now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to speak to you about these 9 heads of the Hydra, of the Lernaean Hydra. And the first point that I'd like to make is that these 9 heads of the Hydra are connected they're to do with 3 lots of 3. Now the number 3 is very significant esoterically. It's there on a spiritual level, it's there associated with awakening, initiation, and 3 times 3 is 9, the magical number. But the 3 times 3 and the 9, the magic of the mystical number 3, is also held in its opposite shadow aspects. Now, of the 12 signs of the zodiac, the sign of Scorpio is the sign par excellence. That's an unfortunate phrase, Chandra, but it's the sign that holds the deepest, most resistant aspects of our personal selves, our ego, the heaviness of our nature that we have created through the use of our free will, down through our various incarnations, down through the centuries. Okay, now astrology is a circle, 360 degrees, divided into 12 segments. Each one of those segments is 30 degrees. And when you divide the 30 degrees by 3, then you get 3 lots of 10, otherwise known as a Decan, D-E-C-A-N. So the 9 heads of the Hydra of Scorpio, and I should say, I forgot to say this in the first talk, that I'm not talking about just someone who's born with the sun in Scorpio. I'm talking about somebody who has the moon in Scorpio, or progress planets in Scorpio, or Scorpio on the midheaven. But even more than that, I'm talking, and I did cover this in the first talk about the fixed cross, the signs of Taurus and Scorpio and Leo and Aquarius. But just suffice it to say that we all have some link or connection somewhere with humanity's shadow. We're human. Unless this is your very first incarnation on Earth, then you have some history with the building of light, hopefully, and no doubt possibly the accumulation or the accretation of darkness. So the most resistant darkness is held in the 3 decans, or these 3 groups of 10, in the sign of Scorpio. So just to explain, 0 to 10 degrees, that is the first decan. 10 to 20 degrees, that is the second decan. And 20 to 30 degrees, that is the third decan. So, for example, if I have my Saturn in the 15th degree of Scorpio, then it would be falling in the second decan. Now, there are decans in all the signs of the zodiac, but we're focusing here just upon Scorpio because it holds the densest shadow. And Uranus, this catalytic flame-throwing energy that's coming from Uranus via the sign of Taurus directly across into Scorpio, is activating and releasing the poisons held in our shadow between 2019 and 2026. Okay, but it's not just enough to say that there are 3 groups. These 3 groups also correlate. 0 to 10 degrees of Scorpio correlates to the physical and the etheric realms. So we are physical beings, and the physicality has a connection to our health, to what we eat, to how well we are in our bodies. The second decan, this is 10 degrees to 20 degrees of Scorpio, has a direct impact. This is sort of where the emotional shadow is stored, between primarily the issues associated with our physical shadow are held in the 0 to 10 degrees Scorpio. Issues associated with our emotional or our astral shadow are held between 10 and 20 degrees. And issues associated with misuse of the mind through the rational or the lower mind are held between 20 degrees and 30 degrees of Scorpio. So our shadow is compartmentalized in these 3 different segments. Okay. And then you take each one of those segments, so 0 to 10 degrees, and if you divide that by 3, then there are 3 segments within the first decan. So I'll just outline them here for you. So 0 to 3.3 is the particular specific part of Scorpio where issues to do with very primal issues associated with death, with sexuality and with survival. So you could say our DNA, they're held there. 0 to 3.3 degrees Scorpio. Now, in order to lift the density, and what I'm talking about here is density of those issues, in order to lift those, then we need to kind of aim for the opposites. So we need to aim for vibrations and life and creativity and creation to neutralise harmful energies associated with, very primal energies associated with survival or death or sexuality. That's 0 to 3.3. Then the second, that's the first hydra, the first head. Yeah? So the second head is held between 3.3 and 6.6 Scorpio. Now don't worry if these technical things are bothering you. You just can leave them and just listen to the teaching behind it. And this is the degree of physical comfort. And these decans, these 9 heads of the Hydra, I should say, are outlined by the Lord Dwell Cool in the book Esoteric Astrology. And the Lord Decan, as he is known, makes a sort of passing reference to them. And I've spent the last, probably 30 years exploring and going deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding these 9 heads of the Hydra. Basically by listening to people's stories, talking to clients, and relaying the stories and the challenges back to these degrees of Scorpio. But I digress. So on the second head, this is still in the physical etheric component, 3.3 to 6.6 Scorpio. This is the degree of physical comfort. And I should say that I've realised by dialogue with people, this is also associated with greed and avarice and getting stuck in a rut. And of course the opposite of physical comfort is sharing of whatever it is that we have, food, resources, and I think ultimately a respect for the earth. Okay, and then that's the second head. And then the third head of the Hydra is to do with money. Money, I think I heard someone say on the radio the other day that the, what was it? The desire to possess money is the root of all evil, or something along those lines. And I suppose that's true. You know, money is power for those who have it, or control. And so when one controls the money of a society, then one can control people en masse. So the third head associated with money can be found in the 6.6 to the 9.9 degrees of Scorpio. Okay, so just to recap, in the first decan between 0 and 10 of Scorpio, we have the 3 heads of survival, I'll call it, physical comfort, think greed, and money. Okay, and that's the 0 to 10. That's the first decan, and those issues you will notice all have a connection to the physical world that we live in. Yeah. And now I'm going to shift and start speaking about the second decan. And this second decan, as I mentioned earlier, holds the emotional shadow. So what I have been talking about there is the physical etheric shadow. And the second decan, and this is from 10 degrees to 20 degrees of Scorpio. Or by relationship, planets impacted in the fixed cross, if you have anything between 10 and 20 degrees in the fixed cross. Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio. Okay, so the 3 heads that are connected to the astral are fear, that's 10 degrees to 13.3. Yeah. Fear. And when I think of fear, I guess I think of denial. I think of an ostrich hiding its head. I think of the, people going on the defensive, aggression, if you like, because of fear. And I think of the herd mentality. The opposite of fear, and of course this is a very, very strong part of the ego. Our egos are very, very easily controlled through fear. The opposite of fear really, I would say, is unconditional love. It's courage, and I believe it's also something to do with anchoring ourselves in the higher astral realm and recognising that we are spiritual beings. Okay, so that's the fourth head of the Hydra, fear. The next head of the Hydra, I hope you're following this and staying with me. If you're getting a bit lost because of the numbers and the astrological side of it, just pick up what you can. So now I'm up to the 5th head of the Hydra, the 5th head of our individual, racial, national, international shadow, and it's hatred. So here I'm talking about 13.3 to 16.6 degrees Scorpio. Now hatred is the most embedded part of the ego's shadow. And when I think of hatred, I think of vengeance, and I think of blame, And of course this is very, very powerful when it is driven by a leader who's sanctioning hatred, or at worst disseminating hatred, because there always needs to be a scapegoat. Yep. And of course the opposite of hatred, from my perspective, would be compassion, forgiveness and integrity. Yes. So this is very difficult, and that is the 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the 5th head of the Hydra. Still got 4 more to go. So of course by now you would have realised that these heads of the Hydra, none of them are very nice. Yeah? This is where the deepest, most resistant parts of our human nature are buried, in these 9 segments of Scorpio. And we can carry these buried heads with us for, many lifetimes and not even be aware that they're there. But gradually, as we grow in spiritual aspiration and in qualities of treating each other well and treating the earth well, then the darkness that has previously been buried in our subconscious, bit by bit it becomes revealed. And it's revealed by the light of one's soul. And because we are going through the great change, the planet Uranus is revealing in very shocking ways the shadow that I'm carrying, and my neighbour's carrying, and our Prime Minister's carrying, and everyone's carrying. And the purpose of this is to cleanse and to purify and to redeem the shadow, to lance the boil, so that we can move forward as a species. Okay, so, and did I say that hatred, I think, is the most entrenched? And I guess I'll just digress a little bit here to say that when there's a battle, if it was a physical battle, you'd have the generals on either side and they'd have their armies and they'd be plotting and planning and having strategies. And in any battle, there's territory that will be held onto for dear life, and other territory that will be released if one's back is against the wall. So the territory of hatred and fear, these 2 facets of the astral, the emotional shadow self, the 4th and the 5th Hydras, the ego, and this can be humanity's ego, an individual's ego. There are many names for the ego. The unconscious, the dweller on the threshold, it holds on for dear life to the 4th and the 5th head, will not surrender them. And in that myth that I'd outlined in part 1, Hercules had been told by his teacher that the only way to gain any control over the heads of the Hydra was to kneel and to raise the serpent. This is raise fear, raise hatred, raise greed, raise survival issues, raise money, all the heads up into the light. And this was the way that transformational healing would occur. Because if we just go in and attack the 9 heads, then of course every time one head's cut off, another 2 emerge. So the heads have a capacity to multiply when we use our negative emotions, our negative actions towards them. And of course we see this all around the planet at the moment. Okay, I digress again. I'm back to the astral Decan. I'm moving between 10 and 20 degrees. Remembering that between 10 and 13.3 is the issue of fear, the 4th Hydra, the 4th head. Between 13.3 and 16.6 we have hatred, the 5th head. And the 3rd of the emotional issues in this Decan is fear, hatred, it's ambition. Okay. Yes, an ambition. The way I look at ambition, I guess I'd say that it's got something to do with what it is that motivates and drives us. Is our motivation from the ego? Is it for selfish? Is it for greed? Is it for power and control? or are we motivated from the heart? Okay, so this is the 6th head of the Hydra, ambition. And I have noticed, as I've spoken to people over the years, that sometimes it can manifest as unholy ambitions, or it can manifest as outrageous personal ambition, but it can also manifest in an individual as a lack of ambition. And the degrees here are 16.6 to 19.9 degrees Scorpio. Yes, okay, so you can see, and these are the astral. They're the 3 heads in the astral Decan. Fear, hatred and ambition. Okay, and now we're moving on to look at the 3rd and the final Decan of Scorpio. So I'm talking about the 20 degrees to 30 degrees of Scorpio. And when I divide that into the 3 sections, and did I say this governs the mental? This governs our belief systems and the power of the mind. And the first of the heads of the Hydra is pride. And pride can be found between 20 degrees and 23.3 degrees Scorpio. And my associations with pride are that we can get very one-eyed about things. We can puff ourselves up. We can become very righteous, very black and white, yeah? Lacking tolerance. And so the opposite of pride to me is a capacity to suspend judgment and to try and look at things from, to walk a mile in someone else's shoes rather than to believe that oneself is the ultimate authority. Yes, so that's one of the segments. What did I say? This is the 7th head of the Hydra. The 8th head of the Hydra is separation. And separation can be found between 23.3 and 26.6 degrees Scorpio. Okay, and so separation is the power, and all of these are coming from the lower mental planes. That's the power of the mind to quantify and to cut and to segment and to rationalise and to create distance. When we separate ourselves from our fellow humans, we do this by making them the other. We do this by making them less than ourselves. We do it through strength of the mind. It's like an ice wall that comes down. That we've built a wall here, and we don't care. We're not interested in who is suffering on the other side of that wall. And when I say that, I think about the refugees that we had for decades and decades, all around our beautiful earth. We've had people fleeing cruelty and harm and injustice, and they'd become refugees. They had no countries to live in, and certainly when it came to, my country, Australia, some very heartless policies that separated them. They're not worthy of our care and compassion. They become the other. Yes, and this is the 23.3 to 26.6 degrees Scorpio. Now, the opposite of separation, what we're striving for with the healing and the redeeming of issues to do with separation, how we can lift it up into the light, is to recognise that we are all one. To search really hard for what it is that unites us, and not focus upon what it is that separates us, and not to act or to live or to choose separation. Okay, and then the last of the 9 heads of the Hydra, the 9th head, is cruelty. And cruelty can be found buried in the 26.6 degrees of Scorpio through to 30 degrees of Scorpio. Yes, and when I think of cruelty, I think of heartlessness, and I think of murder and mayhem, and I think of I think of things like the Second World War and the concentration camps, but of course cruelty can be small acts of cruelty. It could be to animals, it could be to the planet, it could be, and it's coming from the mind, so it's the heart's disconnected. And that's the key thing to remember with the three mental heads, is that the heart's not engaged. Yeah, and the opposite of cruelty, well, what is the opposite of cruelty? I suppose it's understanding. I suppose it's forgiving one's enemies. I suppose it's love in the face of great suffering and pain. A refusal to strike out when you are struck. Turning of the other cheek. Okay, it's a pretty heavy subject, isn't it? These 9 heads of the Hydra. Okay, so just to sum up, and I'm just about to stop here, but just to sum up, we have the sign of Scorpio, and it is being infiltrated and penetrated by light that's coming to us in as a downward sort of like a lightning strike from cosmos, from the heart of the Great Bear, actually, bringing electric fire to lance humanity's boil, humanity's shadow, our survival issues, our apathy or our acquisitive issues, our financial money issues, our fear, our hatred, our ambition, our pride, our separation and our cruelty. This is a big task, isn't it? You know, if I'm working on trying to heal myself, I could have bits and pieces of all of these issues to various degrees or the other. And maybe I've cleared a bit of my fear here, or I've given up a bit of my pride there, or I've been able to move past some of my inertia or my apathy here. But over this 7-year period, as Uranus moves through Taurus and shines its brilliant light onto these decans of Scorpio, these 9 heads, the 7-year period, 2019 to 2026, we're being asked to go as deep as we can into the cleaning of our psyche. Physical, that's the 0 to 10, first decan. Survival issues, physical comfort issues and money. Emotional cleansing, fear, hatred, ambition, and a cleansing of our belief systems and the way we use the power of our mind to neutralise and clear out some of our pride, separation and cruelty. This is my task. This is your task. This is the task of every person on earth between 2019 and 2026. Now, of course, and here's another error I made in the first talk. I was sort of saying, well, this is the 7-year period and we've got to do all this in 7 years. Of course, that's laughable and it's impossible. And we can't do it all in 7 years, but we need to do enough of it. We need to do enough of clearing of the shadow of humanity so that we lift the vibration. We need to show the soul in us, the realms of purity and of goodness, that we are capable of behaving better as a species. It's a spiritual test with an end date. Yeah. None of us know how it's going to end, and of course there's been, however long you've been working to heal yourself. Could be days, could be weeks, could be months, could be years, could be decades. How long we have as a species been recognising that we have to lift our game. And we have a test. How far have we come? How many of us are prepared to put in the hard yards to do this? We're being tested on a physical, emotional and mental level. And after that, well, let's see what happens after that. It's like any exam. We just have to knuckle in and do the test. And then let the chips fall where they may. And then it will be up to the holy ones to, to help us, Because really what we're trying to do is raise our consciousness and raise our vibration and move into the age of the heart and out of the age of Pisces. Okay, so that is the end of the second chat, and here I've really just been trying to let you know what the 9 heads are and where you can find them astrologically. And the next talk will be about the breakdown, or the timing, if you like, of which of these shadow issues is being dealt with in any month within that 7-year period, 2019 to 2026. Okay, stay tuned for that next talk when I get around to it. This has been Chandra Easton from StarAstrologyHealing.com, and should I say that I've worked for 40 plus years, I've lost track really, 44, long time as an astrologer, and we have to do it piece by piece, individual by individual, and having your own esoteric astrology chart done is a wonderful way to actively become involved with your own growth. That's all. Bye for now.